when the sky is high. No reason to stay around. Pick your hands and you can touch and fly.
Hello and welcome to the Aviatrix Book Review. My name is Liz Booker. My guest today is a pilot and a poet. Originally from San Pedro, Argentina, for over 3 decades, she's flown thousands of hours in many types of aircraft all over the world. She was the youngest woman jet captain in the world on the Boeing 707 at age 25, the first Latina captain at American Airlines, and the first Latina Czech airman. Linda Pauwels, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Liz. It's my pleasure.
I'm so excited to talk about your project, but I thought what I would do is start with a review that we recently received from poet and author Sharon Darrow. So I sent Sharon a copy of your collection of poems, Beyond Haiku, Pilots Write Poetry. And here's what she had to say about it. In this small volume of haiku and free verse, Captain Linda Pauwels and her aviation colleagues share some of the images, emotions, and special moments aviators experience on the job and at home, flying and living as pilots. Some tender, some comical, some profound, these poems and their poets share something of what it is to be a person whose life is both earthbound and airborne. Delightful in their variety, spare in their presentation, yet full of underlying meaning, these poems will expand on non-flying readers' ordinary conceptions about flight and share meaningful experiences with other flyers. In addition, each section is opened with a short prose introduction. My favorite is this excerpt from the section on nature and beauty. And here she's quoting you. How do we describe the weight of moonlight shining through the cockpit windows during takeoff, or the pulsations emanating from the green glow of a dancing aurora borealis, or the liquid gold flowing from a rising sun directly into the heart? The illustrations, pictures created by children of aviators, add a bright and cheerful note to the stories in the poems. Without these illustrations, something would have been lost from the overall series of poems. With them, the collection gains heft and meaning. And I thought that was just lovely. You know, I sent this collection to Sharon. She's a friend. She was my poetry teacher at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. And I honestly sent it to her as a way to reconnect and share how excited I am about this whole project, the Aviatrix Book Review and our book club. And she wrote me back and said, would you like me to do a review? And I said, if you have time for that, that would be wonderful. And she, you know, as well as she taught me, I never could have said it better. When I read the poems, I laughed out loud. I found myself crying at odd times over things like the sunrise over the instrument panel. And I just thought it was really lovely. What a great project. And I can't wait to hear what brought you to this, how you put it together. But first, I wanted to know a little bit more about you. Tell me about your aviation career and how you got into poetry.
I have been flying for a very long time. And I started when I was young. I was 16 without any money. And I did that here in the US. I was very fortunate along the path because a lot of people helped me and I wouldn't be here without their assistance. So that is the genesis of this whole thing, is to be able to use a skill set that I've developed over time to give back.
How about poetry? Like, how did you get introduced to poetry?
I think poetry came out of in the mid 2000s. I lost my medical certification. I was ill. I was pretty ill, and I didn't think I'd recover my medical. And during that time, I went back to school. That's when I got my graduate degree in education. It was, brick and mortar when I could, and then virtual or online when I couldn't. I wasn't healthy enough to do it. And part of my project was understanding meditative practices for stress resilience. So with that, I did a lot of different types of meditative practices, including walking meditation, poetry, and I started becoming interested in other people's voices over time, historically. ancient poetry, men, women, different cultures. It just appealed to me. And then I started dabbling in what pilots really like, because we don't talk a lot. Our thoughts are pretty simple. So I thought, haiku is pretty cool for that. And that's how the project really got started.
So when we talked before, you mentioned something about children. Did you have children while you were actively flying, like during your career?
Yes, I did. Our first child, Natalie, is now almost 29. She's a naval officer, intelligence. And our second, Patrick, is almost 27, and he's a drug and alcohol counselor. He lives in Maine. With her, I was not able to fly while I was pregnant because the FAA would not allow that. But with our son, I did. I flew until 6 months. They were an integral part of the flying, and with both parents being pilots, not very easy, very stressful to leave children.
No kidding. Well, it sounds like they turned out okay.
Yes, with some bumps along, but yes.
Good job, Mama.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, so tell me more about this project. Tell me, how you got it started, what you're trying to achieve with it. Tell me everything.
I work for American Airlines, and we're represented by a collective bargaining agent, which is the Allied Pilots Association. The union has a pilot discussion forum that was called initially Challenge and Response, and then it became The Line. The majority of the pilots who contribute to this forum are men. There's few women because the forum can be somewhat rough and tumble and difficult, like, the normal population of pilots. But there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I've participated in it for many years, probably over 20 years since it started. About 5 years ago, I decided to post and start a poetry thread.
That's so
And I
great.
called it Morning Haiku. And the introduction to the book discusses this a little bit. So there were some varying reactions to this initially. The dislike for poetry was pretty intense. But I think a lot of the participants really started to like the different poems that I would post that were not mine. They were other people's, old poems, poems from the Middle Ages, poems from different types of cultures. And I think it started to gain an appeal. So people started writing their own haiku. And this summer, during COVID, I decided that I would like to put this into a book. And I didn't know how that would work out, but that was the genesis of the project. And, it was difficult. We have over 40 pilots who contributed poems. I had to obtain permission from them and then be able to have the children illustrate, which was an integral part of this for me from the beginning. And, obtain permission from their parents because they're all minors. Coordinate all of this. We did it in 2 months.
That's incredible.
Yes, that was pretty incredible. And that was the publisher, Jackie Ruiz, was pulling her hair out. We got it out by Christmas, which was, we didn't know whether the pilots who were furloughed were going to stay furloughed. And all of the funds from the book are going to the Emergency Relief and Scholarship Fund that the union has.
That is fantastic. What a great cause. And I mean, what a team effort too.
It was a team effort.
Tell me a little bit about the publisher, because I know that she's also a writer in aviation and you guys have a connection from the past. Share a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, the reason that I pitched this to her is, how difficult it is to get poetry published, and she's a hybrid publisher. So she had interviewed me for a book called Latinas in Aviation, because that's part of the history that I didn't discuss with you, is, some of the firsts. So I wrote a chapter for her book, Latinas in Aviation, and Jackie Ruiz is doing very well in publishing and in other aspects. She has successful businesses. I approached her and I said, Jackie, I don't have a lot of money. I'd like to be able to get this published. Can you help me? And can you help me cheaply? So she did. And it was because of her that this came to light, and she set up the website and, helped with some of the social media, which I don't do. So yes, I'm very thankful to her, and she loves flying.
I love that story. I mean, I think it's just a great example of how, your connections can help you accomplish and achieve mutually beneficial efforts like that. You helped her with her book. She helped you with yours. I think that's wonderful.
Well, in something like that, let's say the similar, this book is being appreciated by the pilot population. And apparently, if I read Sharon's review, which was very overwhelming to me, it's being appreciated by others as well. There's a next book, Women Pilots Write Poetry. And for that one, I like collaborative efforts. So after we had the writers group with you, and I remember a discussion about the aviation artists, so the American Society for Aviation Artists. I reached out to them and was able to enlist the assistance of their education chair to mentor a young artist for the cover for the next book.
That's
so the
fabulous.
concept of the next book cover is pretty amazing. And I can't
Wow.
wait to get it done. And all of this is people working together to benefit each other and mutual, let's say, mutual creation.
Yeah, mutual creation, but with a purpose, right?
Yes, with a purpose, with a
All
purpose
sharing
beyond ourselves.
Yeah, and all sharing our joy and passion for aviation,
Yes.
right? Right.
And for people who are coming into this field.
Exactly right. That's so fabulous. Do you in the before we go on to the details of how you're soliciting for the next book, did you have a favorite poem or a couple of selections from the book that you wanted to share?
The first one?
Yeah,
Sure. Let me see. I actually happen to have the book right next to me.
I do too. What a
So,
coincidence.
yes. There is one that, there are two that touched me greatly. One of them is very short, and I'll tell you the backstory of this. So may I show it to you?
Sure, of
Can
course.
you see it? So the illustration of the
Go a
feather.
little higher.
So this one, the feather, and the haiku is, I grew up in the land of Tecumseh. And this is to honor Captain Michael Boring, who is deceased. I obtained permission from his widow to use these words that he posted on the forum after he read the poem, Live Your Life by Tecumseh. And this was an ongoing discussion, and that poem touched him greatly. And this is what he wrote. And then Callista Shabo, the young artist, I gave her this and told her a little bit about it, and she drew the feather, which to me, this illustration of the feather is so beautiful. So this touched me immensely.
That's
The entire haiku with how it came about and all of this. I didn't have access to Mrs. Boring's contact information because it wasn't updated in our website. So I had to request from this discussion forum if anyone had her contact information and reach out to her. And it's a very delicate thing. Your husband is deceased. He's deceased only a few months. And we would like to see if you might authorize his words to be used for this book.
That's a lovely tribute and a wonderful way to celebrate him.
Well, and in addition to that, Captain Boring was operating as captain on an MD-80 that had a wind shear event that was very closely not survivable. And he was in charge when this happened. And it happened on landing in DFW airport. And we saw this replay of this event in one of our classes. And they came within very few feet of the terminal on the go around.
Wow.
So for me, this is very personal because he saved a lot of lives, he and the first officer. And I wanted to be able to do something to honor him and to have this in writing in the pages forever.
That's lovely.
So the other one is right next to the page, which is this drawing by Penny, who's 6 years old. And all of these haiku, by the way, they were selected and sent to the young artists after I saw a sample of their work. I tried to select a haiku that they would be able to illustrate, but that they would be able to create by illustrating. So this one is simple yet complex, angelical reflection, life, a love cookie. And I coincidentally had her father for recurrent training. I was the instructor. And he came over right after this book was published. And we talked about her drawing because I hadn't spoken with him. I didn't know her father. And he said that Penny, at 6 years old, when she read this haiku, this is what she envisioned. So the heart is the love cookie, but the love cookie isn't complete unless it has a happy home,
That's
friendship,
wonderful.
and love. So, you know, those things are so cool for me, Liz. I can't tell you. This is a very soulful project.
It is. It's wonderful. And it's wonderful to hear the background of it too, because it gives it even more depth. I mean, it's already
Yes.
layered, like Sharon says, but it's amazing to hear the human connection behind it and the meaning.
And each one of them has that. And of course, I'm perhaps the only one who knows these fully, unless the participants in the forum has a personality. And, you know, the pilots who participate in the forum, the online personality isn't necessarily what their personality is in the real world. So there's some humor in here that, you know, we know that the reader will not know. But yes, there are many layers, including the cover. I mean, the layer of the cover. So the cover looks just like an airplane and a planet, but it's more than that. Joe, age 10, and Scarlett, age 12. So this, the cover, is a depiction of pilots within time, the past. No, this is a digital drawing. This is a hand drawing. And the past, the present, which is a 2-engine airliner, because we don't have any more 4-engine airliners, they're all gone. The future is the planet, which is Mars. This is in honor of Dr. Buzz Aldrin, who was in our cockpit a few years ago with his sense of humor, which was get your ass to Mars. So the planet is red for Dr. Buzz Aldrin. And the rose on the planet is for Consuelo, the Saint-Exupéry.
Oh,
So
yes.
Consuelo is Exupéry's wife, and she is from El Salvador, and that's a connection to me for my Hispanic heritage. So that's the cover. So all of these layers are within this little chapbook.
I love that. So how do you envision the next project working? You don't have the poems yet, right?
I've started receiving submissions already, and we can discuss that as well. Some of the submissions are incredibly touching. What I love about this next project is that it's very different. The first one, I had all the content. Here, I have no content. I have no expectation as to what I'm going to receive, and I don't know. So it's a project of discovery. Right now, women pilot organizations have disseminated the submission request, and I have started receiving longer poems, haiku, short poems. I received an essay, which I may actually excerpt some elements of this within the 4 themes that I requested. So the 4 themes for this next book, Women Pilots Write Poetry, are themes that, with my experience, I think are important for women: on strength and endurance, on radiance and beauty, on love of flying, and on finding balance. So we'll see how this comes about, how it can be curated into a cohesive whole, and I look forward to it.
So if people are interested in submitting a poem, what timeline are you looking at? Like what's the deadline for submissions, and what's your timeline for publishing?
So the deadline, of course, what's great is that I'm sort of controlling the deadline and the publishing. So even though there is a date, there is some flexibility within this. Right now, the deadline is March 31st. I would like to be able to publish by the end of the summer. Once I receive the poems, the curating aspect has to come in, and that takes a while. It is very labor intensive. And then assign the haiku or short poems to the artists. That in and of itself also takes time, because they need the time to be able to process the poem and then to be able to illustrate it. So initially, that's the deadline, March 31st, with publishing by the end of the summer. If we don't receive sufficient submissions by March 31st, I will extend the deadline and communicate again, say, hey, you know, we need more. I would love to have this submission reach women all over the world, because we have pilots everywhere. I'd love for this to be an international contribution, because I have some specific thoughts about how to go about this.
We'll get the call out there everywhere we can. And I hope that you have a really rich field of submissions to choose from.
I hope so
And-
too. I hope you're going to contribute.
I'll see if I can slap something together. I'll put all of Sharon's effort to hard work and maybe be able to come up with something worthy. So the last project was the proceeds of that were going to the pilots affected by the furlough. What is your vision for this project?
So for this one, I would like the proceeds to go directly to scholarships for young women who would like to fly professionally. And I haven't determined where. I'll need some assistance with some advice for that. Well, first of all, we don't know how these proceeds are going to work, but if the first book is any indication, the exposure that it's getting, including perhaps, the gallery exhibit, you never know how these things work out or what tentacles they have. So I would like to have at least, let's say, maybe 2 or 3 specific scholarships that already exist, so as not to duplicate efforts, and be able to say, right, we will contribute to this. And then part of the second book, I would like to contribute a portion to the American Society of Aviation Artists because of Priscilla's assistance. So I'd like to be able to do that as well.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you can pay it back there. You mentioned a gallery exhibit. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Well, I asked the gallery director if I could use the name of the gallery, and he said, well, just for now, say that it's in North Texas. So
where are
we
you
are
based?
I'm sorry?
Where are you based?
In DFW.
Good to know.
So
okay.
it's near Dallas, Fort Worth. It is an art center that is new, and we are in discussions to have an educational, interactive exhibit featuring the poems from the book, the art, but this art center has other types of venues within it available so that, let's say, children and or adults can write poems. They want to be able to bring some experts in to help with that and also be able to illustrate. Now, it's not approved yet. It's with the curating team. The proposal is there. So I would say we are in preliminary discussions to do this.
So we talked about this before, but I would be really excited if I were walking through an airport. I always stop at the little local displays of children's art or whatever, and this would make such a neat display in an airport.
I think that's a fantastic idea, Liz. I would love to be able to do that and start perhaps with DFW and Miami initially, because I have contacts there. I think that once there's a little bit more exposure for the book, then you have the heft, if I can use Sharon's word, to be able to go in to pitch with some more weight.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then you'll have 2 full projects that you can pitch. Correct. And you have ideas for more. Tell me about that.
Yes, so the third, I would like for this to be 4 books. That's my thought. The first 3, let's say we have Beyond Haiku, Pilots Write Poetry. The second one, Women Pilots Write Poetry. The third one is Seasons of a Pilot's Life. And I already have the thematic development for that. I haven't sent out the submission request yet, but I will soon because it takes time to have submissions come in. The fourth, I have received requests for the fourth one from pilots who have read this book. They would like a military version. So they would like military pilots write poetry or something. I don't have the title yet. I was thinking about On Freedom's Wings.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so with that one, I reached out to the editor of an aviation poetry book, who is a pilot and a retired lieutenant colonel with the Air Force. And we're talking to see if he might be interested in collaborating. But I don't know, I will need an author to help me with this because my background is not military, even though I was a contractor. I would like a military person to be able to assist a military person who loves poetry.
Oh,
so I don't know if you know of anyone with it.
I know some people.
Yes. So yes, that's the fourth. And if this has, I didn't want to tell you this before. I thought this would be the perfect time to spring it on you.
Thanks.
Yes, so if your creative juices are flowing and it's something that you might be interested in, I think it would be fantastic.
I will absolutely, absolutely, energetically, enthusiastically help with that project. And I'll rope some other people in too. I'm sure I can find some other more qualified resources on the poetry side. But yeah, I mean, I'm from the Coast Guard. I retired
Yes.
from the Coast Guard, but I spent 6 years of that career in joint operations. So I'm familiar with the cultures of all the services. So I'm definitely.
I would love, so please think about this, because we will talk when you have the meetings that we do online, right? And I think I have some thoughts about this. I have some thoughts about the cover. We have the contacts with the aviation artists. We can find a young artist to be able to design the cover, have the themes for the book, and then put out the submission request and help curate it and contribute your contribution, my contribution. I think it would be great.
I love this so much. I mean, there are so many things about it I love. I spent at least 24 to 25 years of my military career kind of bottling up my creativity. And to be in a place now where I not only get to tap into my creative life and combine it with my love of aviation, but then to be surrounded by other people who are doing the same thing is just totally energizing. Thank you.
I think it's beautiful. I love that we're in touch, that there's connections that are a little bit unusual.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, I know.
You lived in my neighborhood.
I know.
Just to be clear, we discovered on a call that she looked at I had a fake background picture of my backyard, and she says, "Is that this neighborhood in Florida?" And I was like, "What? How is that possible?"
I know. And that our kids were there. I mean, our daughter was born. I brought her back from the hospital. We built that house. The neighborhood was brand new. So I love that. So Liz, I mean, I have a feeling that, book 4, Liz.
Yes, Linda, I'm with you. This is so great. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that we forgot?
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss this work. It is beautiful, and I hope people enjoy it. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing and for giving me the platform to discuss it.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for applying your creative energy in this way. I know it's a tremendous amount of work, and you're doing this while you're still working full time. You're still flying, you're instructing, right? You're an examiner.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're doing all of this on top of your, active flying career. I had to wait until I was done with that to be able to carve out the time to really dedicate myself to this. So,
but this is something that I think is important to discuss as well. This is not a stressful project. I mean, it's stressful, the first one, because we were on a very tight deadline and I wanted to be able to get this out. But it's the contrary. This is energizing and motivating. So it's sustaining. It helps me to be able to do my job better because I feel alive.
That's wonderful. I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about getting to know you and all the other writers and all of the other pilots who are in the book club, who are participating in the small group discussions. They did some icebreakers with us in December. I mean, it's just an amazing, special moment for me personally, and it feels like a moment for us, like a shared.
I love what you're doing. I thank you very much for thinking about this, for helping us, and thank you.